Hey everybody, this is my Black Ghost knife fish tank, and I recently did a little bit of work in here. I've been working on a project, and for that project I needed the smaller Sun 303B filter that I had on this tank. I wanted to put that on a different tank, and then I wanted to put the larger Sun 304B filter that I had sitting around. I wanted to put that one on this tank. So I finally got around to doing that. I pulled the smaller filter off of this tank. I put the larger filter on this tank. This is an older filter that I had. I've modified the trays that were inside. The UV light kind of destroyed the trays, so I kind of rigged it together using PVC pipe and hot melt glue. And the only issue was they didn't stack in quite properly, so I had to kind of squeeze that lid down on there. And when I was doing it, I was getting a little bit of leakage coming out around it. And I think that was only during the process of trying to get it clamped down. Once I got it clamped on there, I haven't had any issues since. And I've had it sitting on this towel for 2 days now, and I haven't seen so much as a drop of water come out of there. Not that I think the towel is going to collect a sudden leak, but the towel would get wet if it was even leaking a tiny bit, and that wet towel would indicate that I've got an issue, and so far we're still dry as a bone. So that aspect of it should be okay once I get the filter moved back into position, underneath the tank where you'd be out of sight and I won't be tripping over it. But the more I'm thinking about it, the more I really need to get in here and do some serious cleaning. It's definitely time to do another treatment for the cyanobacteria. I'm never really sure what I've got going on in this tank. It always looks like it's a combination between cyanobacteria that has somehow mated with hair algae. And it's just this nasty stuff that just creeps and crawls and grows all over everything. It comes out in sheets and clumps. And now I've got all of this brownish reddish stuff. This is real similar to the stuff I've got going on in my other tank, but I mean, there's a good example of how this green stuff just grows all over everything. It's gross. So my Black Ghost knife fish was out and about the other day. He was swimming around, being quite active, and while I don't think the tank is getting too small for him, I definitely think the cave he's living in might be getting a little too small for him. This cave down here is where he spends most of his time, more or less under that flat rock. Now, there is more room under there than you might think. That's not as tiny as it appears. It goes all the way back to this big piece of wood back here, and underneath of that wood is still cave-like area. So it's a low cave, but it goes back there pretty far, and in fact, there's several different ways the fish can get in and out. So he's not as cramped as he looks, but I do think it's getting about time to get in there and make some changes. I lost my silver molly, if you're wondering why you only see the black one, and that is actually a Dalmatian molly, not a black molly. But the silver molly is no longer with us. I saw signs of it looking rough, and then within about a week or so, I came down one morning and it was on the bottom. And that just seems to be the way it goes with the silver mollies in particular. But mollies in general don't seem to do well in very fresh water. They need to be in harder water, or preferably brackish water. Mollies do best in brackish water. And silver mollies, for some reason, never last long when I keep them in fresh water. I've kept them for several years in brackish water. They never seem to last more than maybe 6 months to 9 months or something in fresh water. So I don't know if I'm going to get another one to replace it. We'll have to see how that goes. But I do think I'm going to get in there and do some more work on rearranging the tank. You can see how much movement of all the plants and everything I've got now. So the larger filter on here has really stepped up how much current I've got flowing around the tank. And I'm hoping that'll reduce the amount of algae and stuff I have growing all over everything. But I've got a ton of space for detritus to hide. Again, back there, you can't really see it, but that's like a pile of rocks. That's almost like a condominium of caves. There's 3 levels of cave system back there underneath of that rock. And then there's, behind, underneath of that piece of wood back there. And then, of course, there's the piece of wood laying across the top of it, which creates almost like the fourth level of places for fish to hide. I really went crazy. This is the first tank I ever really sat down and put a lot of thought into how I wanted it to look. And while I made it look beautiful, you know, prior to the green monster growing all over everything in there, it looks beautiful, but with the lack of experience of maintaining a tank, I made it way too... It's too congested. There's not enough flow that keeps the detritus up and off the bottom. So I've always had like nutrient levels through the roof in this tank. I've always had huge amounts of milt, or not milt. What's the word I'm looking for? Mulm is the word I'm looking for. Tons of mulm all down in the corner. That's that really, really, really fine, powdery, broken down stuff that you get at the bottom of fish tanks. It's called mulm, and that, you know, if you were to lift up these rocks, it would look like a snowstorm in there instantly from all the mulm that would kick up out from underneath of there. So I think it's kind of like the end of an era. As beautiful as this tank is, as much sentimental value as those pieces of wood in there, I really went through a lot of effort collecting that wood. It was the first wood I ever really went out and collected myself. And, you know, I've just been really reluctant to do anything with this tank. I've always liked the way it sat here, but I think the time has come. It's just, you know, the years have gone by, and it's time to do something else with this tank and modify it around a little bit. I do have some other projects I'm working on, and I do want to get to my gourami tank and actually get in there. We can actually walk down here and have a little bit of a look at the gourami tank real quick. I know I got other lights and everything going, so we got reflections everywhere. I wasn't really planning on shooting gourami tank video, but you can see my gourami tank is very, very, very overgrown. You can see I've got no light getting to the bottom of the tank. The rocks are piled up everywhere. So that's my next project that I'm going to get into when I finish working on the project I'm currently working on, which you're not going to get to see yet. I've been talking about it over on my Patreon page for quite a while now, but I'm hopefully coming down the home stretch here, and within the next week or so I'll be revealing what my new project is. If you want to find out early, of course, you can go over and check out my Patreon page. In the meantime, we're going to put this one on the back burner. It is something that I've begun thinking about. It is something that's probably going to need to be done. At the very least, I'm going to need to get in here and start cleaning it again. But expect some changes, I suppose, here in the future coming up on my Black Ghost Knifefish tank, because I think the time has come. Like it or not, I'm just going to have to get in there and start maybe modifying this tank and doing something. So as we move into the colder winter months and I'm spending more and more time indoors, we'll see what happens. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything. You never know what it's going to be with me, and you never know when I'm going to reveal my big project that I've been working on, and you don't want to miss that when I do. So don't forget, this one's my Black Ghost Knifefish tank. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you real soon on the next one.